capital budgeting. Okay, what does it mean? Okay, so in finance, we talk about allocating capital to projects. Okay, capital is looking at a limited amount of resources that need to be invested to maximize return. Okay, so in this particular module, you're looking at the workings, how to calculate those amounts, those measures. Okay, so what do I need to determine if a project is good or bad? There are 4. Okay, payback, average, internal rate of return, and NPV. They also give you profitability index, which is a separate working that is taking the NPV into consideration. Okay, but those are your 4 basic measures of working out whether the project is good or bad. Okay, so the first bit is payback period. How do I work out payback period? Well, let's first understand what it means. Okay, payback period is this. I have an initial investment. So let's say a project requires 1 million. Okay, would this be an inflow and outflow for the project? No, it's an outflow for the project because you're investing. Okay, so if I invest 1 million in the project, the initial investment is 1 million. Okay, this would be seen as an outflow. If I invest in the project will give me cash flow. Okay, those are cash flows. Those should be all positive. Okay, so here's an example. Obviously, what we're looking at here is when do I pay this back? Okay, so how long does it take me to pay back the initial investment? That's what you're looking at. Yes, so you'll have a minus here, you'll have a plus, 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 and you're looking at determining what? The payback period. How much time does it take me to pay back this? The initial investment. Okay. Right, so what's the accept and reject criteria? I accept when the payback period is less than the maximum acceptable. Okay? And I reject if it's greater than the maximum acceptable. Right, so here's an example looking at A and B. Okay, so how do I get the payback period for A? Well, how much do I need to pay back? 400,000. How much do I have after year 1? 140,000. How much do I have after year 2? 280. Have I paid back yet? No. How much do I have after year 3? 420. Have I paid back the initial investment? Yes. But 420 is too much. Do you agree? Okay, so do you agree I need 2 years? Okay, if I have 2 years, I'll have 280,000. How much do I have to pay back in the last year to pay back the 400,000? Correct. So 2 years and 120 out of 140 in the last year is paid back. Okay, is the payback period. Right, so it'll be 2 comma what? What's 140 divided by 1? What's 120 divided by 140? On the calculator? 120 divided by 140 equals? 6 comma 87.
No, 6 comma.
No, it can't be 6 comma.
I mean 2 comma 857.
2 comma 857.
Yeah.
857.
2 years and 85.
8 comma 57 years. Let's have a look. Yes, correct. Okay, so the payback period for investment A was 2,874,14. Okay, so I'm looking at when do I pay back the initial investment. That's what I'm focusing on.
So investment A is 2 years and 120.
Yes. Okay, so now you work out B.
Okay.
What is B's payback period?
2 years.
Exactly. Okay, 280 after the first year, 120 plus 280 in the second year, which is 400. Okay, so 2 years is the answer for B. Simple as that. Make sense? Okay, here's a few more for you to try. I want X and Y. What's the payback period for X? What's the payback period for Y?
X is 3 years and Y is also 3 years.
Exactly. Okay, so the reason why I've given you this is there a better project based on the payback period? Why not?
Because they're both going to pay off at the same time.
Because they both...
Also, after the 3 years, they're both going to make the same amount.
Correct. They both need 3 years to pay back the initial investment. But do you like one project better than the other? If you had to choose, which one would you choose? Why? Would you choose why?
Because the initial payout looks more impressive.
Correct. Okay, Y gives you 400 in the first year versus 50 in the first year for X. Okay, so now you're applying time value of money. Does the payback period apply time value of money? No, it doesn't. Okay. Alright, so now we need to look at measures that use time value of money. That's the goal. Okay, so the first measure is the average rate of return. Okay, this isn't looking at time value of money yet, but it's taking an average into consideration. So it doesn't let's say, bias one project compared to another. Okay, so example, this project. If I work out an average, I'm looking at all 5 years. I'm not looking at 1 year or 2 year. Okay. Alright, so if I'm looking at this one, what is the average for A? How do I get the average? I add all of that up and I divide it by 5. Okay, to get the average for the 5 years. It's 140. Okay, if I add up all of those and I divide it by 5, what do I get? Work it out. That's a very good estimate. It is 140 as well. Okay. Alright, so if I add up all of those, divide by 5. If I add up all of those, divide by 5, I get 140. Okay, if I divide that by the initial investment, which is what? 400,000. I'm going to get 0.35, which is 35% as an average rate of return. Okay, do you get this formula on the formula sheet? No, so make sure you add it to that formula sheet of yours. Okay, average rate of return equals average after-tax income divided by investment return or level. Investment cost, actually. Initial investment.
What you say that it was? Average after-tax income?
Yeah, it's just the formula. Yeah, the formula in your note is the formula that you need to remember for the exam because you won't be given this equation, unfortunately.
Average after-tax income divided by the investment times 100.
Yes, divide by 100. Well, if you multiply by 100, you'll get a percentage, yes.
Which is what you want.
Yeah, or you could leave it as a decimal. That's fine.
Okay.
It just depends on the question. What do they give you as an answer? Happy with that one?
Yes.
Alright. Next one. NPV. How do I work out NPV? Well, let's first understand the theory. Okay, so this is the theory. If you can understand the theory, you'll know what the calculator is doing internally. Okay, because this gets calculated on that financial calculator. We just need to know how to use it.
The average rate of return
Is a formula.
and I'll do it on this one.
You do it on the scientific.
Okay, net present value.
You would do it on this one.
There's NPV.
Yes. Okay. Right. So we need to know how to use the calculator. Okay. So what is the theory behind it? So what is net present value? Net present value is I've got future amounts. Okay. So cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. I'm taking all of them and I'm discounting them back to time 0. Okay, that's the theory. And what am I getting? I'm getting the present value of my future cash flows. Right, then what do I do with the present value of my future cash flows? I subtract the initial investment. Okay, because remember, you need to invest to get cash flow. Okay, so if I'm investing a certain amount, I need to then say, well, how much did I get over the life of the project? Okay, but in today's terms, at time 0. Then I subtract the initial investment, and if I'm left with a positive, I would accept. If I'm left with a negative, I would reject. That's the theory.
That takes into account the inflation.
That takes time value of money into account. Correct. And that's why NPV is the best measure of value when it comes to working out whether the project is good or bad. Okay, that's the theory. Let's see how we would do this in practice. Okay, what rate do I have here?
10%.
That's the I. Okay, then I've got A and B. Okay, so we saw A and B earlier. Okay, so now we're going to work out the NPV for A and the NPV for B. Right, so
N is 5.
no, you don't put in variables. You're using a different function on the calculator. Okay, so, alright, so on the calculator, what do? Okay, this is the step. So on the HP, okay, on the HP, you need to put in the initial investment. So what is the initial investment? No. Okay, just listen to what I'm saying, okay, before you type anything in. Okay, so the initial investment is 420,000. Okay, that's the initial investment. I need to put this into the calculator. So what do? I type it into the calculator. So type that in. 420,000. Is this an inflow or an outflow? It's an outflow, so you need to use that plus minus button to make it a negative. Okay, then you press the CF, I think it's CFI or CFJ on your calculator. That's the button that you're using on the calculator to insert the first cash flow, which is a negative 420,000. Okay, CFJ I think it is, or CFI. Okay, so press that button. Okay, so now you've inserted the first cash flow. That's sitting in the calculator's memory. Okay, what's the cash flow in year 1? 140. So type in 140. That's the second year's cash flow. That's positive, so I'm going to leave it as is, and then press CFJ, CFI. Okay, then do it again, press CFJ. Do it again, press CFJ.
If they're the same, could I just press CFJ?
No, you can't.
So I've got to retype.
Yeah, you have to type it in, press it. Type it in, press it, type it in, press it.
So that's 2, 5, times.
Yes. Okay, so now you've inserted that into your calculator. Okay, that's how you would do it on the HP. Okay, we need to work out NPV. In order to work out NPV, I need a rate. And the rate in this question was 10%. Okay, so after having typed in all your cash flow, right, you then put in the rate. So you type in 10, okay, as your rate, and that's your I over Y. Okay.
Put that as I.
Correct. Right. And now what am I looking for? NPV. So press second function, the NPV. And what do you get?
110,070.
Correct. And that's how you do it. Okay. And that's how you get the net present value. So the calculator is doing all the discounting internally. The calculator is giving you one answer that's representing the present value of all those amounts back in time, less the initial investment. Okay, you happy with the steps?
Yes.
We're going to do a few. So by the time you leave today, I'm hoping you're happy with how to use the CF function on the calculator. Okay, so let's see if you can do B. Do B and see if you get the same answer as me. Good. Right, great. So, and that's all you really need to take away from this week. It's can I use the financial calculators, NPV, IRR functions. Okay. All right, so 2 more examples for you to try. X and Y. Negative. Negative. Okay, good. The negative is important because what was the criteria for NPV? Accept when it's positive, reject when it's negative. They can ask you about this in this module. Okay, so if this is negative, would I accept the project? No, you'd reject it. Okay, so based on a 22% required return, I'm not generating sufficient.
So what's the...
Don't worry about that, that's the IRR. We're coming to that later. Okay, I'm going to discuss that with this example just now. Okay, for now, just make sure you can get the minus 123,000.
So I'll put 8.
Do you get this?
Yeah, 32,400.
Positive or negative? Negative. Would I accept or reject? Correct. Okay, see if you can do the next one. C and D.
CND.
Yep, last one. Or last example of this particular measure. What are C's?
Negative 162,376.
Yeah, that's right. And then let's check D. Yes. Okay, so which project is better in this example?
D.
Yeah, D is clearly the better project because D yields a return that's greater than the cost, okay, and it's positive in terms of NPV. Okay. All right, so that's NPV. That's how I'll find a measure of value. Okay. Now we need to change the focus and look at a rate. Okay, so IRR again, just to give you the theory, is what? It's a rate of return that I'm getting internally. Okay, so every, let's say, system of cash flows, where you've got an initial investment, where you've got cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, and so on. Okay, in all projects, there will be an internal rate of return, which is an I, and what do they call it? They call it the internal rate of return, which is the IRR. Okay, so we've just been using I's for cash flow in terms of present value, future value, and we've been solving for it. Okay, yes, okay, so that's the button we're going to be using, second function. Okay, what is IRR? It's just the measure of internal rates. Okay, so how much does the cash flow actually give us in terms of a rate of return? Right, so if I have an investment of 10,000 and the future value is that and the period is 4 years, what would my I be? Work it out. What would my I be? Okay, you've seen questions like this before in the compound interest chapter. So give me the I for this investment. Correct. Okay, so what is that representing? That's representing the internal rate for how many cash flows? One cash flow. Okay, you invested an amount, you got an amount. Okay, there's only one inflow and one outflow. Right, so what happens if I have a series of inflows and outflows? What am I going to use? I'm going to use the IR on the calculator. Okay, so how do I do this? Well, on the calculator, you're going to do the same thing as you did for NPV. So insert all the values as is. Okay, once you've inserted all the values, the last step you don't do. Okay, so remember we used to put in an I over Y. We put something in. You're not going to put anything in. You're just going to press second function, IRR, exactly. Okay, so try that and see if you can get IRR for A and B. If you do, you'll get those answers there. Yes, well, the first one is correct. Good. Okay, so what's the decision criteria with IRR? Okay, I put it in your notes here. Okay, the decision criteria here is to reject if IRR is less than cost of capital and accept when it's bigger. Okay, so you reject when it's smaller, you accept when it's bigger. Right, so what was my rate here? 10%.
So they would accept this one.
Correct. Okay, you would accept A.
Accept.
Because the 19.85 or 86 is bigger than the 10%. Okay, so the return is bigger than the cost.
It's greater than the 10%.
Yes. Okay, and then do it for B. So this section is all about the calculator. It's so important. Okay.
So I've got 21.65.
Correct. Okay. So that's A and B. Let's go back and look at X and Y. Okay, so see if you can get X and Y's IR. We saw X and Y earlier. Okay, we looked at net present value. Here we're looking at IRR, internal rate of return. Okay, so what are the IRRs for this one? Correct, for X. Yes. Okay, good. Okay, we're rejecting because it's less than 22%. Correct. Good. Okay. That's the right answer. All right, so just to come back a few slides here and to look at this. Okay, so earlier we did a working for X and Y. There's it. Okay, earlier on we said we would reject because NPV was negative for both. Right, so if NPV is negative, does that mean you won't have an IRR? No, it won't. It just means you have an IRR that's too small. Okay, so that's something important to note because those were the IRRs.
Okay, so the minus 123,000
is the value.
Is that the value of your actual loss, taking into account the...
Yeah, that's losing value.
Rates.
That's losing value based on the required return of 22%. Yes. Okay, so this project isn't giving a return based on time value of money. It is giving a return, but only 11%, not 22. Okay, it's too low. The 22% is what you're requiring, yes. Like almost a break even, if you will, yeah. Okay, good. Okay, see if you can do C and D, the last two. NPV, there's C and D. What do I get for C? What do I get for D? What did you get for C?
Zero.
Yes. Okay, why is it 0?
Because it's equaling, it's 500,000.
Because if I add up all of this, have a look. What's 50 plus 50? Plus that? Plus that? Plus that. How much do I get? 500. Is there an internal rate of return? No, because this project doesn't return anything. Okay. And then D? No, you didn't. Okay. It's just the cash flows aren't sufficient. Yes, okay. And this is in line with what we saw earlier. Okay, remember NPV was better for D and bad for C. Alright, so D is clearly the best project. Okay. Alright, and then the last two notes, profitability index. Okay. This is in your formula sheet. Okay, so PI you'll see is in that, it's the last one on the right. Okay, you'll be using that to do this calculation. Okay, so yeah, do I know how to work out NPV? Yes. Where does it come from? It comes from the calculator. Okay, so you might have to work it out first, then plug it into the formula. Or if they give it to you, then you just plug it into the equation. Right. Initial investment is what?
What's this MIRR?
Yeah, we'll look at it just now. What is the initial investment? It's the starting amount. Okay, remember all projects require an investment. Okay, greater than 1 is good. Right, and on this note, modified IRR is when I have cash outflows later in the life of the project. So the project looks like this. -1, +5, +5, -3. Because you've got a negative here and a negative there, I've got 2 investments, inverted commas. Okay, so when looking at IRR, you're going to get multiple IRRs because you've got multiple investments. Okay, so how do we get around that? Okay, it's by modifying the IRR. Okay, so the equation that you've got in your notes, in your book, not book, your past paper formula sheet, okay, is that one. Do you see it on the formula sheet? Okay, so you will be given that equation in the formula sheet.
What is it?
Modified IRR. Okay, the only thing that you won't have is the C. What does the C represent? There's it. Okay, so make a note for yourself. On the formula sheet, the C represents the future value of the inflows. Okay, plus means inflow, minus means outflow.
So the C is the future value
of the inflows. Yeah, so future value of the inflows divided by the present value of the outflows. Right, that's how we get a modified IRR.
So it won't give me that bracket. It won't give me the entire bracket.
What do you mean the entire bracket?
Will it, so you've got C there, will it give
So
me,
C will be a value. This will be a value from the calculator. Okay, future value of all the inflows.
Yes.
Alright, the present value will be an amount from the calculator. Okay, so 2 amounts on the calculator. So you'll have one amount, let's just say it's 10 divided by 5, close brackets, you'll have 1 over, let's say it's 3 years, and then you'll minus 1. Okay, these answers you get from the financial calculator.
Do we have examples
Okay.
of that?
No, the examples we'll look at in the assignment. Okay, so when we do assignment 4, we've done 3, yes, assignment 4 will have modified IR. If not in the assignment, we'll look at ones in the past papers. Okay, but there are some in the notes. Okay, not notes, study guide. Okay, if you want to have a look at that in advance. Okay, in assignment 4, maybe just to check if there is one. Yes, there is. Okay, question 4 is modified IR. Okay, and that's today's lecture. Right, so just to reveal that answer there, why do I use modified IR? Because there'll be multiple IRs. We spoke about negative cash flow appearing over the life of the project. Okay, so modified IR is the more accurate answer to represent the rate that I get from the project. Okay, happy?
Yeah.
Alright, so next week I'm going to do the difficult chapter, which is the bonds. Okay, so if you can, try go over the theory. The bond chapter is the most difficult chapter.
This one.
Yes, the next set of notes.